The King's Speech has taken place today, the 17th of July, and following the Leasehold Reform Act that was passed back in May, we have been waiting on tenterhooks to see which Parliament is going to be voted in and if that new Parliament is actually going to carry those laws forward and how quickly they're going to do so. Now, Labour had a lot about leasehold and commonhold in their manifesto, and luckily it has been mentioned in the King's Speech that took place today. Prior to it happening, there was lots of articles going around about what was featured in the King's Speech, and leasehold wasn't mentioned at all. But it's definitely there. So today I'm going to unpack with you what's been mentioned in the King's Speech and what it means for leaseholders in the future, how long we're expected to wait. Now, one thing to mention before going into this video is it is a draft bill, which means there's lots of debating to go, there's no confirmed timelines, and it is going to take a little bit longer than some of the laws that have been passed and were mentioned in the King's Speech today. Okay, so let's get into it. Right, let's just have a look at the timeline of key dates. I will put a timestamp in the caption below, so if you already know all of this, please skip to the bits that you want to find out about. So let's just have a look back to see where we're at with getting this through the many and long stages of getting it passed as a law. So the first King's Speech took place on the 7th of November of last year. Lots of stuff came out of this, which then had to be passed as a draft bill, and that happened in the 27th of November. There was then a long legislative journey, which takes a lot of time, and as you can see, it achieved royal assent on the 24th of May, which was just 2 weeks before the news came out that there would be a new election. So obviously everything had to get kind of bundled up really quickly before that took place. Then it was a wait to find out, you know, who the new Parliament's actually going to be. And then, of course, we were waiting for the election. Nothing was happening with these bills until this point. So the new Parliament came into play on the 5th of July, which was Labour. And today, the 17th of July, there's been another King's Speech which has delivered everything that the Labour Party want to do. And that is in line with the manifesto promises with the Leasehold Reform Bill. But one thing, again, that I am going to mention here, it is a draft bill. Okay, it's not like some of the other laws that have been passed today and they'll be coming out a lot quicker. There's a lot of debating to go still, and we just don't know when any of this will be passed at all. But the good news is it's in there, it has been mentioned, and Labour really do want to push forward with the leasehold reform. So these are the main points that I'm popping up on the screen here now, and I'll go over those quickly. And this is the main thing that we can glean from the King's Speech today. Okay, so Labour want to act quickly on this to provide homeowners with greater rights, powers and protections over their homes by implementing the provisions of the Leasehold and Freehold Reform Act 2024. The next point is the government will further reform the leasehold system, enacting remaining Law Commission recommendations relating to leasehold enfranchisement and the right to manage, tackling unregulated and unaffordable ground rents, and removing the disproportionate and draconian threat of forfeiture as a means of ensuring compliance with a lease agreement. Now, as many of you as leaseholders will know, as I did myself, my ground rent was over £250, which classes it as an assured short-hold tenancy, or AST. And it essentially means that if you were not to pay your ground rent, then you would forfeit the lease, and essentially the landlord could take the property back from you and you would literally be left with nothing. This is all to help with potential forfeiture and also to tackle this issue surrounding unaffordable ground rents, where many people are having serious difficulties to sell, or they are having to pay for extortionate lease extensions and deed of variations to get around that issue. Now, as I have mentioned in a previous video of the laws that did get passed, unfortunately, capping the ground rent was not one of them. There's nothing to say that this might not be included in Labour's new plans, but the last we heard of it was that you would be able to buy out your ground rent. But we have no idea the detail on that, how much that would cost, what the calculation would look like. But in my eyes, it was just another way that, you know, freeholders could make money out of leaseholders. So really don't have enough detail there to talk about what's actually going to happen with the ground rent. And the last point that he made is the government will take steps to bring the feudal leasehold system to an end, reinvigorating Commonhold through a comprehensive new legal framework and banning the sale of new leasehold flats so Commonhold becomes the default tenure. Now, I think before Labour were voted in, there was a lot of talk about Commonhold as a system. The Commonhold system only ever related to new leasehold flats, and that is properties that are being developed now and they are having brand new leases put on them. This doesn't apply to existing leasehold owners, and I think the Commonhold thing is a really long-term goal, and even in our lifetime we might not ever see and appreciate the benefits of what it would definitely do. So yeah, there's really not much detail, but we have known for a while that banning leasehold flats has been in the works for quite a while. Okay, so what's included in the bill? I have put down on all the points here that they have put out in the bill today. Okay, so enacting remaining Law Commission recommendations to bolster leaseholders' fundamental rights to extend their lease and buy their freehold enfranchisement and take over the freeholders' building management functions right to manage. Okay, so we know previously that they have said that you will be able to extend your lease and it's going to be more affordable, marriage value won't exist. But again, we've got no detail on how this is going to be easier and why it's essentially going to be cheaper. It has been said that you will only have to pay a certain proportion of your freeholders' legal fees, but we don't know what that cap is, whether it's going to be £5,000, £2,000 or £1,000. It's super unclear, and there's still no more detail in this draft bill that's come out today either. Reinvigorating Commonhold by modernising the legal framework. We will also restrict the sale of new leasehold flats. The government will consult on the best way to achieve this so that generations to come will benefit from absolute home ownership. And that's just what I mentioned on the last slide, that basically we know this has been in the works for a really long time. It still does not affect all the millions of leasehold owners that currently have a leasehold flat or house. Tackling existing ground rents by regulating ground rents for existing leaseholders so they no longer face unregulated and unaffordable costs. Again, we've spoken about ground rents and what their plans were to do with that. There was going to be a buy your ground rent out scheme. We don't know if that's going to be the same that Labour are going to do. It probably is going to be quite similar. We don't know the cost. We don't know when this is going to come in. It's still a lot of hope for leaseholders. There's just not enough meat on the bone right now to know how it's going to affect leaseholders, but it is a positive change if it can come through. One thing I want to mention on this point about ground rent is that ground rent is affecting a huge amount of leaseholders. But as the years, the months go on, unregulated service charges is going to become the #1 biggest issue. People are having thousands and thousands of pounds put on to increases year on year, and it's becoming more expensive than mortgages, and many people are ending up in debt because of it. And that whole thing about leaseholders is there's just no regulation, and there's just so much more to do with leasehold. And I think service charges, I think leaseholders will vouch for me on this, that it's one of those unknown costs. You literally have no idea how it's going to rise year on year, and it's scary. It's scary getting those bills through. And again, there's just not enough done for leaseholders. And again, it's going to be similar to ground rent at a certain stage when mortgage lenders will stop lending on properties with a certain service charge. And I believe I have seen accounts of people that are already facing this issue, that they're unable to sell their property because of how expensive the service charges are in relation to the price of the property. Bringing the injustice of leasehold, private estates and unfair costs to an end. The government will consult on the best way to achieve this and implement new protections for homeowners on private estates in the Leasehold and Freehold Reform Act 2024. Ending the injustice of forfeiture so that leaseholders are protected against losing savings they have in their home for potentially small unpaid debts. Now, this is a really promising one. Again, yes, not paying your ground rent is one reason, but there's so many other reasons that you possibly could forfeit your lease, and this is just goes some way at helping to protect owners from not losing everything. Again, there's just no detail on what this is at the moment, but hopefully there is going to be a lot more protection for leasehold owners that need it. And one thing to mention is I did have questions on my last video to do with this. The bill will extend and apply to both England and Wales. So if you are in Wales, good news, the bill will extend to you now as well. Now, as you'll see, I haven't mentioned specific laws that are coming through because this is a draft bill and I sound like a broken record on every single video I've done to do with the King's Speech and to do with the leasehold reform, because things just seem to be repeated again and again and again. And until we've got that action and until we've got that detail, I really cannot say what this new law is going to look like. I can only go on what has come in the past. Some things that have been mentioned include any new lease extension from the 90 years is now going to add 990 years on into the future. And ground rent will be reduced to a peppercorn, which is essentially £0. Lease extensions are going to be easier for leasehold owners to do. They're also going to be cheaper. Again, we have no idea what this new calculation is going to look like. There's going to be better enforcement around freeholders. There's going to be more protection, including forfeiture of lease. And obviously, all new leasehold flats are going to be sold as Commonhold rather than leasehold. So the million dollar question, and I say this on every single video following these King's speeches and the draft bills, I will reiterate again, this is only a draft bill. It might feel like a step back at this stage because obviously it did achieve royal assent before, but this is a new parliament, so everything is essentially kind of just being picked back up again. So because it's a draft bill, it is going to take longer than something that's actually been passed. There's a lot more debate to come from this. More details required before it becoming a bill and before we actually have real detail about what is going to be the new norm for leasehold owners. The timeline is going to be longer than the majority of full bills that have been announced in the King's Speech today. And how long is a piece of string? Labour do really want to push this through, and if they live up to their manifesto, hopefully we can start to see some real action in the coming months. But again, like anything, things could take months to years to come in, but it is a positive step forward in leasehold, but there is such a long way to go forward, and what is really helping leaseholders now is the question. I just wanted to put a quick summary together of everything that has come out today, especially if you're a leasehold owner and you're desperately looking for when you might be able to sell, when is the best time to sell, when should you extend. There's just so little detail about that at the moment. I always advise to seek legal advice. However, if it was my situation, if I was desperate to sell, I would not wait for the laws, because you could be waiting months, you could be waiting years, and in that time, you're just continually trapped in leasehold. So there's just never going to be a right time to get rid of your leasehold property. But that is my advice. If you're able to wait, and you know your service charges are quite reasonable, and maybe it's just your ground rent that's stopping you from selling, I possibly would wait just to see what comes. But we're going to hear more as the weeks and months go. So as soon as I hear news, as soon as there's updates, I will put another video together just to keep you updated and in the loop about everything to do with leasehold. But if you have any questions, as usual, please do leave me your comments below. Happy to provide some guidance. If there's something I can answer, I'll find someone that will. And let me know what situation you're in with leasehold. What were you hoping to come out from the speech? What laws are you really hoping are passed? It'd just be interesting to see what situations everyone's going in right now. But I hope you found today's video useful. Please do give it a thumbs up, and I look forward to seeing you on my next one.